let's step back. First, to see who I am. I'm John Denton, and I am currently a full-time instructor at Collins Career Center. So I spend my days teaching high school students about IT, which is now more about getting to unlearn things because they think they know things and teaching them proper concepts. In my career, I have been a programmer, an architect, a manager, a small business owner. I've done small business IT. I've also juggled, clowned, been a magician, and I've been a puppeteer. So I like to call my resume as I can't hold a job. So I've done a lot of different things. And through that, I've got to meet a lot of people and experience a lot of different things. Where I'm at in my life now is I'm a first-year teacher. So this is the first year I'm doing this. And so most of my background is professional. It's a corporate career now, and in the last 7 years, small business. And working with people in small businesses, and especially what I call the ultra small business, called the person who does it on the side, I've come to appreciate the challenges of doing that, especially today as we're in a different kind of economy, and where you about have to have 2 or 3 different economic ventures just to feel stable. It's a different world than the one I got the brochure with when I was in high school. So in that, I'm currently developing my own freelance business to more focus on 3 things: educate, enable, and empower. And what I see first of all is that we have a glut of information. We're flooded by information on a regular basis. If you went out today and Googled HTML, you would find millions of pages on it. And if you went to one of them, you may or may not be overwhelmed. Quite honestly, I'm overwhelmed sometimes when I look at them, and I've been coding almost my whole life. So there's all this information out here. So I'm looking for ways to better present information so that both students and small business owners can feel comfortable with the technology they're using. To not have to know everything. I mean, who here can operate a car? Who here can design an engine? Usually there's one. But so we're all able to operate cars fairly safely and handle a whole lot of things without having to know all the particulars. So technology should be the same way. I also am providing enabling services, so I host websites, I set up WordPress. I do some of those things for people that you could do yourself, but it may just be more worth time, money to have someone else do it. Like currently I'm setting up a podcast for a friend of mine. That's something he's interested in. But he took it so far that he's paying me to do some of it, and he's picking up the rest of it. Which the last piece of empower is the other thing I've seen is that the more you have to rely on someone for something simple, the more stress it can create for you. And so I'm looking for those empowering kind of activities, whether it be consulting, coaching, or very specific documentation, so that if you set up a blog, I want to know how to update your blog or make changes to your site, you have something written down so that it is in fact updating your site. Not going to WordPress and saying, well, here's how you do this in general, and then trying to map it to whatever you're doing. Because usually you're under the gun trying to get something done. So that's the way I approach everything. This series, talking with you today, is based upon an idea I have for a book, which I'm currently doing unlicensed testing on high school students by teaching it to them, called Just Enough HTML, and a series of things called Just Enough. Because again, you can find out so much information on the web about these things, but it's so hard to know what you need to know. And again, what's that very small piece? Because it's like learning to drive a car, and they start off with, okay, well, let's talk about combustion and how an engine works. Let's talk about steam versus gas power. And it's just too much and too far, so how do we get down to just enough? Now, the thing with computers is, especially now, is when we see a computer, we see it as technology and as something new and something that's different than our other experiences. But if you think about a computer you use, what do we call that part of the background on the computer? Where you keep your eye contact? The desktop. What do we call the desktop? Someone literally looked at a desk and said, here's a desktop. What do I do with my desktop? Imagine a desk with papers on it, and different things, the tools lying around. Now think of your computer desktop with your window open and some icons around. It's really the same thing. You know, the idea of files and folders come from the fact you have files and folders in a desk. If you work someplace where you share files on a server, think about, I remember they used to have document management rooms, and they actually had somebody they could talk to get a file out of the shared file cabinet. So all of these concepts that we work with come from someplace in the real world. If anybody asks about if we've seen a man with glasses that's very good looking, well dressed, that's been breaking into places and stealing projectors, we haven't seen him. Oh, good. Good, we're to the part where we need a picture. All right, has anybody ever heard the term lingua franca?
Lingua what?
Franca.
Lingua franca.
Yeah. I actually, my computer's going to put us in The downside of being an IT person is that I looked at every cloud service on the planet, so who's up fixing it? There's this old term called lingua franca, and what it means is the common language. So what is the common language of business today, internationally? Spoken language, I should say. Not a wrong answer. English is today. What did it used to be? French. Latin was a time. Latin actually predates when the term lingua franca came about. So French came about. French. One of the reasons why France is kind of hostile towards American culture is because French was this unifying language, and then it became English. The next one's probably going to be Chinese. So when we talk about HTML, HTML is the unifying language of the web. It is what every website speaks. Now, very few websites are written in what we would call HTML files. So if you worked with websites early on, back GeoCities, the Wild West of the web, back when everything had blinking text, which just screams 80s website. Is that early? Maybe 90s. They're not being written in that. Like Facebook's written in PHP, which is a programming language, but PHP generates HTML. Google's all in Python. It's always languages, but they all talk HTML. So just like your native language may not be English in a lot of other countries, English is what you speak for business. So HTML is an important topic for us, looking at whether it's for-profit business, non-profit organization, or even education. It's the language that unifies the web. HTML, what is the difference? So, right here, we see this Microsoft PowerPoint 2010, Microsoft Corporation. We call those words. What makes them words instead of letters?
Combination of the different that they're grouped in.
Right. So when we see letters grouped together, we see words. Now, look, here we go. Yay. I almost won was on a session to win a projector at a conference. I really wanted my own. That's a problem with school. You know, too. So when we see letters grouped together, we know that those are words. That's something we learned early on in our education, hopefully. All right, so these are letters, these are words. So how does the words become a sentence? It's capitalization, it's a period. These are the cues that our eyes take when we read them. Humans are very intelligent. Humans are actually vastly more intelligent than a computer. A computer is just a calculator. So we see these things, we learn them, and we can deal with a lot of ambiguity. Computers can't so much. So we go from sentence to paragraphs. These are things that we have common from. The reason I bring this up is the whole design of HTML came from documents. So we talked about the desk became a desktop, files and folders in a computer. HTML was literally an attempt by Tim Berners-Lee at the CERN, which is a physics institute in Switzerland, to put documents on the web, and specifically scientific papers, with the need to link between papers because they all reference each other. I'm currently working on my master's, and to write a paper in business or marketing piece, you really have to write something compelling. To write something in academic, you have to cite. So you're not allowed to say anything original. You got to say 95% regurgitated and 5% original. 6% too much original. Well, I'm looking forward to the end of my school career. When we see these documents, again, we understand them. Even though there's different formats and different ways, we key in on titles, we key in on page numbers, we key in on authors. All these things are things that we know. Computers aren't as smart as you. So computers need a way to understand what's going on. And that way that we've defined is called HTML. HTML stands for a hypertext markup language. And the markup is these kind of tag things. So HTML, when you see an HTML document, you see these tags going through, and that's what tells computers what's what. So we take this, this is actually an example paper I found, with the title, with paragraphs. If I want to tell the computer what this is, I have to tell it, okay, here's where the title starts. Here's where the title ends. So inside of HTML, what you're going to see is always these pairs of tags. Title and then closing. For the paragraphs, each paragraph, just like you'd have to indent and hit return on the typewriter on a computer, you end up putting these tags to space it out. So as the computer's looking at this, it's saying, okay, here's a title, here's my text, here's the end of my title, here's a paragraph, here's where it ends, here's where the new one begins. And then depending on how the web browser is set up, it'll add new lines, indents, and the different things to make it display correctly. So the computer's having to know these cues so it knows what it's looking at. Because it's not smart like you are. Nothing moves up worse than a computer versus computer. Oh, come on. So, with our document, the title is part of what we call the head of the document. It's also where you find author and other information. So we tell the computer where that is. We tell it that all that's the body, so that's the main part of the document. And the whole thing's HTML. So the way the computer sees this is actually a very basic web page, is the computer gets this and says, okay, I'm looking at HTML. There are other things on the internet we won't get into, but HTML is by far the most common, so that's the one you see the most. Then it says, here's the head of it, here's the title. What most web browsers will do is put this title in the top of the window or in the tab. So that's a special thing for it to know. And then it says, here's the body, and it puts all these paragraphs in the web page, and it knows where things end up at. So that's the basic concept. So just like your eyes are going capital letter to period, space to space to space to the words, so the computer's following these tags do the same thing. Now, thank goodness we don't have to actually tell it sentences and words in here, or this thing gets really full of a bunch of junk. Now, what I want to jump into is, so we got to try first. Does that kind of make sense? Start and stop. If we had a telegraph still and everything and then stop, so. I want to show you, using an actual web page here, a little bit of editing. The top I call 5 HTML tricks. And I'll actually have an article for each one of these, except number 5, which I'll have up tonight. So you can read about this again later. Here's the website on the bottom for this. So, if you follow along, and then you'll have a chance also to look at it later. All right, let's find our friend the web browser. Now, in most cases, you will not be encountering a full web page. And in fact, I don't recommend building web pages from scratch anymore unless you have some high-end application or something, because it's just a lot of complication for no reason. So like my site here, I've got an example post in WordPress. I like WordPress. I've used 3 different content management systems, which are these backends that let you build websites, Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress. I'm moving everything to WordPress because I find it's easier for regular people to use. People don't want to spend all their time trying to figure out what the computer's doing. So it's, and the sites look really nice. So what you're going to see in most tools, and this is actually true of even take a class online. This type of, we call it a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. Or what I always call it, what you see is sometimes what you get. It seems like it never quite works out that way. So you can do most of the editing in things from these kind of tools, and it works really well. But sometimes you cut and paste something, or you can't just get it lined up right, or using something like this touchpad, it's hard to get around. So I actually used to use a word processor in the 80s called WordStar, where you put embedded all your codes in. I kind of miss it. But HTML is based on the same technology. Yeah, if you use that, you've used one of WordPress's grandfathers. There's also one IBM mainframe called Bookmaster. So when they first released HTML, I said, it's just Bookmaster. When we switch to this text view, we actually don't see, depending on the editor you're using, sometimes you'll see the paragraph tags show up, and WordPress you don't. So anywhere there's a new line, it's actually added a paragraph tag. It's already created those, it just doesn't show it. So what we can do here is we can go in and add tags. And the key is that every tag that opens must close. So as we work with these tags, let's start with some simple formatting here. So if we want to bold something, HTML has a term for it called strong. Now, always warn that strong does not mean bold. But I have yet to see a web browser that does not show it that way unless you monkey with it. So it almost always is bold. So even here, the editor, when you say bold, it'll actually put the tag in for us. Everybody see this okay? I can crank it up slowly. I lost the power to squint this year. Went back to bifocals. That's a little better. So this strong tag, as it's going across, is saying, okay, words, 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 words. Oh, here I got to do something. So it's going to start the strong. Now, if I put the strong after bold, the word bold becomes bold. If I extend it to bold statements, it expands the bold. So it's this start-stop concept, and this is the way all the tags work. So strong is one of the most common ones because we like to bold things. If I don't close it, if I forget to close it, everything in this paragraph stays bolded. So that's one of those things where if something looks wrong on your web page or your blog post you're working in, you're not sure what's going on, you go in, you look for where you want it to end, you don't see anything, or it's spelled wrong. I did one for a class where I put it S-T-O-R-N-G, which is really hard to see. There's this thing you can do. You take all the words, as long as the first and last letter are the same, it's really hard for you to tell it's misspelled unless you're really looking. So we can fix that real quick. So, just a simple thing of starting and ending. The other thing that's big to do is italicize. Italics, there's a tag, it's called it's EM for emphasize. And so again, this could be made not to be italics, but it almost always is. And I can work there for a minute. So now I've got this block, emphasize what you were seeing. So again, it's a start-stop. It's really easy. Now the challenge is that if you've got a more full web page, there are tags everywhere, and that's the hard part. So it's really about zeroing in your eyes what you're looking for. If I look at the code for this page, one of the challenges with HTML is you can't hide anything. This is what a full HTML page looks like. It's a bit more intimidating. But if I know I'm looking for my text, the size of the keyboard here. I have to save it yet, but I can go zero in on what I'm looking for. So I just focus my eyes on that section. And hopefully you don't get that complicated. Now, if I wanted to make this even stand out even more, I can combine tags. I can use strong and emphasize. So if I wanted to make this even stronger, I can put strong. The important thing here is that tags don't overlap. So if I just wanted to make the word, so I can put strong on the outside and emphasize on the inside, and it makes it bold and italic. If I wanted to make emphasize just the only part that's bolded, and I told it to stop here with the strong. It may or may not work because I've started the tag, but I'm trying to close it. So they're kind of like boxes. Once I say I have my strong box, and I say my emphasized box is inside, I can't go outside my strong box. I gotta keep everything like it's nesting inside of it, like nesting dolls. So what I really need to do is swap these two around. 90% of the time, it'll display just fine. It's a 10% that kills you. So I can just modify one part of that text. Strong and emphasize are probably the two most common you see from formatting. One of the handiest ones I find in this type of setting is the break tag. See these lines here? It's nice to sometimes make it look more staccato, emphasize text by breaking it up, but it puts two lines here because it treats each word like a paragraph. So if I wanted it to be a single line order, I just put a BR at the end. Any place I put a BR, it means put a new line here. So that's nice because any time you're writing, it doesn't look quite right, you want to break something up on purpose. You put this little BR tag, it tells the web browser to just to stop and add a new line. Now, the one thing about this, there's one other that's like this. Almost all HTML tags have an open and close, but of course, it's like English, there's exceptions in the language. So this is one of those that just has the one. And I'm never quite sure of this. I've noticed in WordPress, you don't actually have to use the BR tags. If you just line it right, it'll actually put the BR in for you.
So does the BR make it like double space?
It'll make the single space. Like, let me bring up the difference.
Because it looks when you put BR in there before, it looks in the video.
Yeah,
it looks double space.
WordPress is eating my BRs. I'll show you my other favorite site here. Let's see here. This is called W3 Schools. It's a free website. And it's the best thing it has going in it. The information's great. It has tutorials. This is try it yourself so you can actually play with HTML. So what the BR does is it just adds a new line. WordPress, if you just single space it, it'll put one in for you. So depending on
it adds the BR, then adds the line.
yeah, so I had to pull it back now. Yeah, but most web editors don't do that. So it depends on what it is. It's one of the things you have to play with. So with WordPress, you don't have to worry about it as much. But in general, I've used a lot of different systems, and this is one that I find myself using all the time. So it says put a new line here. Every time it sees a paragraph, it puts a double line to create that spacing. So BR will just put the single line in. Nothing like an example that breaks. The other thing we can do is we can indent. In indenting, there's a concept called a block quote. Now in print media, block quotes are those offset quotes that get shifted. Block quote in HTML is the same kind of indenting. So it shifts it over to the left. So there's more elegant ways to do this in HTML, but that's a tried and true one that's easy to use. Or someone talking before we started about CSS. A lot of it, in pure HTML development, there's a whole other thing called CSS. You do all your styling in that. And there's ways to mix it in here. But generally what I find a lot of folks use HTML for, at least with these kind of tools, is something quick and dirty to make it work. And if it works, I say use it. If you're building a $1 million platform, you may want to get somebody that can, code the thing right, but otherwise,
If it works, it works.
it'll work out. That's sure. All right, so that's now with HTML. So these are some simple tags again that provide formatting. So we've seen tags, we've seen how we can do some simple formatting. Let's step up a little bit more into the idea of a link. The reason why we call the web is because things link together. And most of these tools will have a link tool. So this is sometimes creating a stronger, otherwise even a stronger voice. So I find the guy that invented the thing's got a stronger voice than me. So I'll go grab his Wikipedia page here. When I'm linking to a website, The easiest way to get the web address is to go to the website and copy and paste it. I never try to ID it. I try it once in a while, I don't remember why I don't. Because sometimes these things have weird stuff in it. They have like question marks and ampersands and all kinds of stuff. The easy thing to do is copy and paste it. Another thing you can do if you're trying to get to a different part of it, like one of these links that are in here, you right click, you can copy the shortcut. Sometimes it's copy URL. There's different ways to get hold of the address. What I can do is link here. So I have a simple link. And what it does in the HTML is it creates this link tag, which is also, it's called an anchor tag. I believe it's called an anchor tag because it's designed to hold something down like an anchor. And I'm pretty sure it's the letter A because you're supposed to use a lot of them with the web, and programmers hate typing. That's why paragraph is just P. Newer ones get longer, but these older ones are short because, again, programmers don't like to type. So with this tag, you get something extra. You have the A, which is the tag. After it, there's this thing called an href. Now, I think it stands for hypertext reference, but whatever it stands for, you always use that. That's the easy way to remember it. And there's an equal, and then in quotes, you actually give your web link. So this is so there's two parts to the link. One is this tag tells it where to go, and this tells it what to show. So the two so when we get this, that's a visual here. We see stronger voice, but what will open up. The link will actually open up this page. Now what's interesting is the two bear no relationship on each other. So if I go modify this link, and I tell it I want to go to Bing for searching. But I put in here Google search. Despite the fact that I'm advertising Google search, really your head to the left, the Wi-Fi is going to go in. Oops. Type it in. So even though I'm saying that's just crazy. Here it is. Even though I'm saying on Google search, I'll actually go to Bing. So it's important to make sure that you keep your link names, descriptions, and your links together. Otherwise, it'll go awry. So again, the big point there is, no matter what I say in my link text, it's going to show up. It's really this part here that tells it where to go. And if I actually posted that live, I'm sure eventually I might get a letter. Pictures. With pictures, there's a simple tag called image. And I will tell you that if you could all avoid it, the tool, if you have a system that manages the pictures, it's better to let it manage the pictures. Because usually what it will do is upload the picture and resize it for you in a couple of different sizes and make sure it's fast to load. If you take a camera picture, especially from a digital camera, and don't do anything to it, put it on the website, it'll be about this big on the web page, and it will take forever to download because it will be a huge file. And our eyesight's not that good, these screens aren't that good, so lower resolution images are fine. But a lot of times, if you've got a picture out there that's from a vendor, or customers, the vendor says you can use all the pictures to advertise the products, which they should. If you want to link to a picture of their website, you can go, and of course this is with permission, so that's the other thing I think is it's important to make sure you have permission for pictures. I can go in here to this picture and find where it's at. So all this junk here is the location of the picture file. Rather than,
How did you bring that up?
I went to, I can right click on a picture. I actually do two things. I can save it and upload it to my website itself. And that way I have a copy and it doesn't change. Or I can go to properties. Then I can go and copy the address. So here I can insert an image. Image, again, is one of these tags that doesn't have a closing tag. It just says, here it is, and work with it. So image uses this source name. If the picture is located on the website, it usually starts with a slash or something else. When it's on another website, it will start with this HTTP, which is telling the computer to go look someplace else for it. So this will pull the image from that computer. This is the wrong tab. If my picture shows up. Now, for my other blog posts, I've been using the add media and just inserting it because it does work a lot better. But there are those times when you just want to link to a picture, or knowing how to just copy this picture is really great for Facebook or other things, because you really want things to go back to your own website and your own web properties. The last thing is YouTube. YouTube videos are huge. If you're going to do a website or blog and incorporate video, I highly recommend you use YouTube and set up your own channel and put your video there for a couple of reasons. Number one, it provides another place for people to find you. Number two, you don't have to pay for it. Number three, you don't have to pay for it. And it is easy to embed in your own things, but it's a great way to create another community. Just make sure you don't turn comments on, or if you do, you're keeping an eye on them, because YouTube is known to be like the most vicious place in the world for commerce. But YouTube videos are one of those easier things to embed.
And when you say make your own channel, you mean if you're doing your own?
If you're doing your own videos, yeah.
Otherwise, you can just probably link to videos.
Right. And again, it's a permission thing. If you're referencing something, as long as you're giving credit and things like that, or it's a company you're permission with, just want to make sure you're not claiming credit for something you don't have. The one thing is, to link to a YouTube video, you have to have YouTube.
What if you just think something's cute or funny and you just want to put it on your website or your blog?
I think there's a the big thing is always about money. So if your site is making money and it's a thing that you're trying to drive revenue from, and you're using someone else's property to make money, that's where you get into a lot of trouble. There's this thing called Creative Commons. A lot of things on the internet are shared and allowed to be used as long as you give what they call attribution. So as long as you say this is who it is, where I got it from, or you link back to it, they don't really care. If if you're using YouTube, you know, you're actually trying to promote them. You get more trouble with larger for-profit ventures or, you know, TV shows. They get kind of upset with it. Honestly, if you know, if you're doing something small, you can take a little more risk with it. And worst thing is you get a takedown notice, and as long as you remove it, no one's really going to come get you. There's not a lot of copyright helicopters. So there is this great video on TED about the $8 billion iPod I recommend, or $8 million. I can't remember how much it is. But it takes the math for downloading songs and basically does evaluation based on penalties, and you get like an $8 million iPod. You got internet?
You don't have any. No.
Oh yeah, back in the van. Anybody think all the people here with computers and pads hooked up to this little bitty access point could create a network problem?
I'm going to go look at the router.
Okay. Well, when you go to YouTube, there's a place that says embed, and all there is this big ugly piece of HTML code. You copy and paste it wherever you want it, and that's pretty much it. It's actually one of the easiest things in the world to do with this. There are some plugins and tools. This web page I set up, it's not up there yet, but tonight, tomorrow at the latest, I'll actually have how to do it on there.
Is that where you can, like in your PowerPoint, you can embed a video?
PowerPoint, yes and no. They removed it out of they had it in one version, they removed it from another. They keep monkeying with it. If you use like Prezi, the online presentation tool, they have an easy way to do it. But for PowerPoint, it's a little bit tougher. Because they don't like active web content anymore. I've tried it recently. I played with it for an hour one day, which for me was a lot of investment in it. And after my head got sore, I quit banging my head on it. The other thing you can do is you can just put a link into it and bring it up. Or when you're sitting there, any questions or things you'd like to know?
Well, when you were linking, you said like when you were linking to a
Yeah, here it is right here. Yeah.
What was that formula? It was
A and then href equals, and then there's the double quote, and then there's whatever the address is, the double quote.
There's a space after the A.
Then there's a space after the A.
And on the, you showed how to link to a picture, but if you have a picture on your PC.
If you have a picture on your PC, it has to get to the website. So that's the one thing to always remember, is that whatever it is, and it's funny, I get students turning in stuff, and the computer's stuck on their picture. Like, why can't you see my picture? It's like, it's on your computer. So it's got to get to the website. So this add media will let you upload it. So let's so I've got some pictures up here. Well, yeah, so what happens is that instead of having a full HTTP, it has a part of a reference, but it refers to something on that computer. So it has to be on the server that's on the internet, which is the same place your WordPress and everything else is, or your web files, or whatever you're using.
Would you still have a tag that could be like the...
You still have the ing tag.
Okay.
What you end up with different is that, so if this picture was sitting here in the same directory, like if I had a folder for all the pictures I stole from Wikipedia called Wikipedia, because I'm not really good at covering my tracks, it would start here with a slash, but that's really where, it's one of those things where if you're working with something like WordPress, you can use the media features. If you're working with a web page that you've had someone build for you, and you know where the other things are, we can, one of the things I set up with customers is they have to be set up, they know where to transfer the file to, and then they can copy one and just change that one name. So, any other questions?
That's fine, but pictures not posts. Do pictures have to meet a certain criteria to be, the header image on the blog?
Yeah, there's, depending on the setup, they'll give you dimensions. The big things with pictures, if you're using one of the editors that's saving for web, is you don't need more than 72, I think it's DPI still the term, 72 DPI, and you really want to get the file to be as small as possible as far as size. But then the dimensions will be set based upon whatever the web tool is.
So if you upload a picture for that image, does WordPress automatically format?
Yeah, WordPress will. It'll actually create 3 different sizes. It'll create a thumbnail, a medium, and a full size.
Oh, okay.
So you have different sizes you can play with. And then there are nice plugins for I put one in for Kitchens by Woody's in Barbersville. We just moved their site from an old tool I was using to WordPress. It has a little gallery, so if you're doing like galleries and things, it organizes the images and uploads them and shrinks them and all that kind of stuff. Drag and drop makes it real easy to do. Images is one of the more challenging pieces, other than video, which is even harder.
I found it difficult to upload PDF files to the blog, to WordPress.
Yeah, with WordPress, I can see that because WordPress is wanting to have things that it can show on the web page. PDF's more like a file reference. So in that case, it'd be better to have a PDF directory on the same server and then link the files using just the AAH ref kind of format. Coming up with I'll call them the thing about doing a recipe book. Putting some recipes online for these kind of things of how to do that, because when we're teaching programming, this is basically a form of programming. The way we teach programming is like I don't know, it's not like anything else I've ever learned. But I'm learning how to teach cooking. I know how to make grilled cheese. And I know how to turn it into a program for grilled cheese, which is like, if you saw my program for grilled cheese, you wouldn't want to make it, because it gets so long. But grilled cheese is fairly simple to make. That's about as far as my cooking goes. But I can bake a cake. I got a recipe on the back of the box. So I was starting to think with these technology topics, if we could give some basic concepts of, I have to know how, my mom would teach me how to crack an egg and not get shells in it. She taught me to wash my hands too, that's important. And she taught me how to measure stuff out and put it in. So now I can bake a cake. My wife keeps me from burning it, but I'm not quite there yet. But so I can bake a cake from recipe. So if we could do some of those same things with technology, where it's easy to go look at, that's really what I think it is, where we need to get to. So some things, it doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as you can do it consistently.
So you're saying with PDF files, they're really better to upload?
Upload and then, yeah, because they're not embeddable. So when we think about Facebook, actually, and LinkedIn now has adopted this, and I think Twitter to a certain extent. If you think of what's in a post on Facebook, that you can put a link, you can put a photo, you can put a video. That's pretty much what would work on a blog post. And what that really comes down to is the web browsers. That's what they know how to read and put in there. But a PDF, it has to go to Adobe and launch the Adobe program. It puts them in its own window. So it's more like it's basically like a separate web page almost. Videos used to be like that. Now they're easy. It changes. I was looking at a couple of video game websites. Play games. But in one of them, it was snowing in the background of the web page. Another one, it was raining. So I pop it open and I start drilling down into what's going on. With HTML5, which is the new version of HTML, all the new web browsers, Flash is going away over time, and you're seeing these small video clips. So that'll probably be a future topic for me, is how to embed video on web pages. Because it's really cool. If you get just a 4-second video, it's not a very big file, it's not much bigger than most images. You create this cool visual effect on the back of your web page, and it makes it really active and like it's going on, and it's not really a lot of cost. And And there's already places that are selling very inexpensive royalty-free videos. So if you go online looking for images or looking for videos, royalty-free is a keyword because you may have to pay for it, but if it's royalty-free, it doesn't mean you pay for use. And so it makes the image a lot more easy to use, not to worry about it so much. I'll never come back up. So, but if again, if you look at the bottom of this card, there's I do have a link. I'm like 98% sure it's working. I know it's working earlier. And I've written an article about each of these topics, and I will have the one on YouTube. And also, the last thing, and I have this on there as well, is I always go to these things and leave the session. It's like, well, now what do I do? You know, I spend an hour and I walk away, and I got life. I mean, I got soccer practice myself tonight, so I got life coming up. So where do I go from here? Well, W3 Schools, you know, it can be a little intimidating because it is a full site on HTML, CSS, and everything, but it has some great references and tutorials. And if you aren't intimidated by it and dig in, you can do that, try it yourself. You see how things work and play with it, and you hit a button and it just shows up right next to it. So it creates this really great way to rapidly figure out how something's doing. The WordPress websites, WordPress.com, you can create a blog for free. It'll be WordPress.com plus your blog name, blogging.wordpress.com. But just to get something started, even if you don't publish it, try it out. It's a great way to go and just try things. You know, if you're not happy about it, sometimes great about it. And then WordPress.org is the other site that will give you more information about WordPress, which is one of the easier web tools for building sites. These things are still John 2 Enterprises, which is my site, and it's Just Enough series, which I don't know if I've got it in here yet. These are things that are emerging that I'll be putting out there. If you go to the web page and send me an email, one of the things I'll be doing with these things that I'm building is creating a wiki for each of them, like St. Louis Wikipedia, and putting my book out there and building it a chapter at a time, and inviting people to come and read it and give feedback. And when it's done, I'll give you a free copy. If I do training, I'll give you access to that as well. So if you're willing to do some community development, so if you're willing to spend a little time with me, I'm willing to give you everything I can. And we got any other hoops we can jump through? Any other questions? Or?
Well, you had like the 5 quick HTML tips, and
Yeah.
I remember seeing 3 that you called.
We did using tag styling was the strong, the end, the block. We saw how to link a web page and add an image. We didn't get to the embedded YouTubes. That's the one that the internet kind of died on us. But each one of these, this web page has these same 5 things on there. I copied and pasted so they're exactly the same. And the first 4 have links to articles that have some screenshots and things to help out with. And if there's something that's not clear on it, because it's all first draft, shoot me an email and I'll clarify it and make sure you understand it. Nothing else, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you.